My name is Guillaume. I'm the former coordinator of CLASSE organization, which is the coalition of, well, in translated words, Student Solidarity Union in Quebec, which was founded around assay structures, which is practically the more radical student union in Quebec. So, the presentation will be divided in two separate parts, so just feel free just to tell me when I'll be at the half of it, because I have lots of things we could talk about, I think. So, from the beginning, in a recap of what led to the student strike, in fact, the government in 2010 decided to introduce completely stupid measures of tuition fee increases in Quebec. The tuition fee increase they tried to put in place was a 75% raise of tuition fees on 5 years. So the tuition fees are pretty low in Quebec because historically there has been really hard struggles of students' unions in the history. We've been having 8 general strikes, and from these 8 general strikes, we've been able to win 7 of them. So now we're at the 9th one, but we still don't know if we're going to win it, even if it's been like 5 months that we're fighting for it. So, for the little history of the student movement, in Quebec there are 4 major student unions. These four student organizations are regrouped around the educational model we have in Quebec. And here you have TAFEs and university, from what I get. In Quebec we have these CEGEPs, which are pretty much the way to get to university, like a undergraduate institution that gives professional and general formation to lead you to university or to get a work. So there is, at the collegial level, which is pretty much like TAFEs, there is FEC, the Federation of Collegial Students of Quebec, which is pretty much a yellow reactionary organization. There is FERC, the Federation of University Students. There is TASEC, that's kind of a round table of students that's not doing pretty much anything. And there's ASSE, that led to CLASSE, which is both at collegial and university levels. In Quebec, as you might have heard from my accent, there's a particular context between French people and English people. In Quebec, it's pretty much divided in the university system, since some universities are mainly in English and some other universities are only in French. So, throughout Quebec history of mobilization, it's been really, really hard to get the English people to participate in the student movement, since the national question has always been kind of a barrier or a border to get, well, great solidarity between French-speaking people and English-speaking people. But during the present strike we're leading, we've been able to drop down these borders and to be more inclusive with the English people. So we were really, really glad of having this really functioning, actually. It was really great to see all of these English people we don't see very often in the mobilization in Montreal. So we're pretty proud that we've been able to change minds at this point. So, ASSE, it's a 10-year-old student organization. It was founded in 2001 by mostly radical students that were really tired of the monopoly of FERC and FEC as representatives of the student movement in Quebec and their collaboration politics and institutionalized politics with the government, and especially with the equivalent of the Labour Party in Australia, which is Parti Québécois in Quebec. So, ASSE has clear and radical positions compared to these 2 other organizations. Historically, it was founded against neoliberal measures, and especially against what has been called in Quebec ZLEA, the Free Trade Agreement of the Americas, and it was founded as a coalition of radical youth to fight and struggle against this, and it has led to at least a try of a general continental strike, but it actually only happened in Chile, Colombia, and Quebec. So it wasn't really great at the beginning because they were a pretty marginal organization, but after quite a while, we've been able to grow bigger and bigger, and this led to what's happening today. So it's pretty great. ASSE main objectives are pretty much the same as Jonathan's organization, actually. free education, against commercialization of education, for feminism, for what we call combative unionism. But I'll get back on this typical, well, it's kind of a particular way to organize and to structure unionism that was founded in the 60s by more radical labor unions in Quebec. And it's actually what has led to the present strike and what has led to all the actions that have taken place. So, ASSE has about 60,000 members all across Quebec, but all the members are mainly located in Montreal. They're regrouped in about 23 student associations, 12 from collegial level and 10 from university level, and most of the students are French-speaking people. That explains the accent, I think. So, what about combative unionism? Combative unionism was theorized actually by my master's director. Yeah. And it's kind of a unique compromise in union structuration. Combative unionism comes from a tradition of worker organizations that was really, really strong in Quebec in the 70s. The concept lies on three major poles. Most worker unions in Quebec left this type of unionism. So at the present time, only ASSE in Quebec reclaims itself from this theory and from this practice. The first major pole of this theory is direct democracy. Direct democracy is what structures our organization. We try to have a low level of hierarchy. Is that a word in English? Hierarchy. Okay, hierarchy. Perfect. We try to not to have this into our organization. Then we have the second thing that, just try to make them in order. Political independence. For ASSE, it has always been really, really important to be independent from any political structure, since what we have seen from the other student organizations, they were getting really corrupted by what was going on in electoral politics. After that, what structures ASSE's practice of combative unionism is direct action. It has always been really important to be on the field, to be leading strikes, to be leading really great fights, but to get heard by putting pressure on our enemy, which is mainly the government. In other words, combative unionism could be understood as the negation of concertationism, if this is a word in English, like the negation of having round tables with all the bosses, all the government representatives and the students' unions. Like, there is no compromise to be with these people. We have to affirm clearly that we're right and that they're wrong. This is the basis of our analysis of the context. It seems really fun, but it's kind of hard to have a debate with the media when you reclaim yourself from this type of practice. So, now we could pass to the more funny part with all the student strike that happened. So this is pretty much a great picture. I think you've seen it in the Green Left last newspaper on an article that Roger Annis, a comrade from Vancouver, actually wrote when he was in Montreal, and he gave us a great visit. So you can, cool. December 6, 2010, it was actually the date when we learned that there was really going to be a tuition fee increase in Quebec. At this date, there was a big roundtable meeting where we were invited. ASSE decided to boycott the meeting, decided to organize a protest, even though it was about -35 in Quebec City. It was just awful. It was horrible. I almost lost a feet, I think. It was just really crazy. So the other student organizations went to this meeting with the big labor unions, but I think they quit about 35 minutes after they actually entered in there, since they just realized they were being told really bullshit. They were being told, you have the choice between a tuition fee increase and a tuition fee increase. So, well, they decided to leave. So they had to face the fact that we were right and that they were wrong of going there. So, you can see some pictures. It's right up in front of Parliament House in Quebec City, which is actually a really great city, but with really weird people. Yeah, it's a really reactionary region in Quebec, so you can click, yeah. I know you don't understand, but there are lots of bad words on these signs, so it's pretty funny that you actually don't understand what are on these signs. It was just for fun that I put this there. Translate, okay. The first one is saying, I'm selling my body to buy myself a head. And the other one is saying, education is a fucking right, not a fucking privilege. Shit. So, after this great meeting, we just started thinking more and more about how to organize ourselves and how to be able to go to a massive campaign of information for the general strike. So that's when on March 24th and then on March 21st, we organized some big demonstrations in Montreal. Well, at the time we considered these demonstrations as big, but now we would consider them close to failures considering the fact that we're in such a great period of mobilization. On March 31st, there was the provincial budget deposition day. And on that day, the famous tuition fee increase was included in the budget. So we organized a big rally. There was about 5,000 people. And we really started to have great solidarity links with community organizations, with research groups that really helped us to build arguments against the government and to publish them into really mainstream media, because at the time we were really marginal in the media. So at that time, we were starting our campaign. So you can... Yeah, so on March 24th and 31st, we really started to do the first steps into mobilization. There were the first direct actions that were organized. There were several numbers of occupations in the Financial Ministry of Quebec, in, well, the Bosses Union in Montreal, in the International Commerce Board of Montreal. All of these, even sometimes we've been able to put like two simultaneous occupations at the same time, and we've been able to get no one arrested at the time that this was going on, so it was really amazing. At one point, we have even been able to bring people. Well, the first thing we did is that it was pretty funny actually. We rent a bus and we put people in the bus, and we took people, we put them in the metro, so the cops followed the bus, and we went all across town with the cops following the bus, and we did two occupations at other spots downtown. It was just really great. The cops just went into it with the closed eyes. It was awesome. So, yeah. So you can see pictures of things happening in during the occupations. It was really awesome. But then after that, even though nobody got arrested, there was severe, massive campaigns of arrests and fear on militants that actually participated in these events. Most of them actually got arrested during summer and are now facing, the lowest are 5 criminal charges and the highest are about 21 criminal charges for these occupations. So about 65 people got arrested this summer. It was really awful. But I'll come to this a little bit later. You can, cool. At last spring, we've been able to... Cool, I'm on time. At last spring, because of the context between national student organizations in Quebec, we ASSE decided to call for a general meeting to see what we were going to do, what was going to be the students' movement's strategy to try to go and lead the movement to a general strike. So this meeting had no clear organization supporting it, since we wanted everybody to feel free to join the meeting, just to try to give the clear basis of what was going to be the movement to come. So out of this great meeting that the other student organizations really feared with reason, 3 main recommendations get out of there. First of all, there is solidarity and democracy. In the past, the other national organizations didn't really function in direct democracy, which led to big problems, big political problems and gaps between the political structures we were trying to push forward, and even having them going against positions that their members actually voted in their democratic instances. So it was pretty weird dealing with them, and that led in the past, like in 2005, there was a great 10-week strike, 10-week general strike in Quebec, and without the consent of their own members, these organizations decided to get off the strike. and simply abandoned us. So we didn't want this to repeat again, and people had really great fear of what these other organizations were about to do. So we have been able, by some kind of way, to convince their members to adopt our ways of doing politics. So in some way, they were really trapped with their own members. So it's pretty funny. It was one of the greatest ideas we've never had, I think. Yeah. That's Laval University in Quebec. That's where it was being held. That looks like a, well, that's where the director of the university actually has his office. All the other buildings are like concrete, ordinary buildings. It was fancy. So, what also came out of this national meeting was that there was not supposed to be any recommendation of any offer at any time from the government when we were going to be on strike. So that would mean if we go at the negotiation round with the government and they simply give us, they make an offer, we can't sign that offer without consulting our members. For us, it seemed pretty simple, but for these other organizations, it was kind of a great thing to put forward because they usually used to do this without even consulting their members. So it was, we really had them with this one. And, well, I'm quite proud we've been able to do this. Another thing that came out of there is that there would be no denunciation of the acts of each organization on the public sphere. That means we are doing more radical things. We are leading direct actions, and most of the time they're not. In the past, they used to try to marginalize us in the media, just saying we were all dangerous communists and anarchists, leading perturbation, leading weird actions. So this had great pressure on the way we were able to put forward our ideas in the public space. But now with this resolution, they really had the hands tied, so they couldn't do really what they wanted, well, criticizing us in the public sphere. So we were really also pretty happy to see this going forward. But even though these resolutions were adopted by pretty much all the local student unions in Quebec, I mean, FEC has been able to go against these positions lots of times during the strike. But, well, we've been able to lead it anyways, without them. So it's pretty cool. I think I guess solidarity has its limits for some people. Well, that I said it already, the massive campaign of arrests that followed the spring mobilization and campaign organization, people were getting waken up at about 5 in the morning with about 8 cops, just 8 really big, tough guys, going and waking you up in your bed just to pull you out in jail. And they usually used to do this on Fridays, so you would spend the whole weekend in jail because courthouses are closed during the weekend. So everybody has had the same shitty treatment. And after that, the cops decided to create this special unit called Gamma. It's a special unit to watch for marginal and anarchist activities. So pretty much us. Yeah. So
what does it mean? Like, what is
the acronym? It's Gamma. It's Guet des activités des mouvements marginaux et anarchistes, but it means the surveillance unit for anarchist marginal movements. Yeah, pretty much it. They actually have this in their name, and after this, they're saying they're not doing political discrimination. Well, we never quite understood, and we got involved into some legal things against this, but it was just, well, horrible having them trying to justify this type of name in the media. It was actually pretty fun. Yeah. Yeah. Then, after the summer comes fall. With the fall, it's pretty obvious. At fall, we were really a little bit anxious about what was about to be going on. During all the summer, we had been preparing ourselves. We did a big summer training camps with lots of militants coming from all across Quebec to get them ready for what they were going to have to do in their own local unions. And we were quite surprised by the way this summer training camp was a really great success. There was about 250 people that got nowhere in the woods to simply hear about how the hell we were going to do a general strike. And nobody actually believed in it because we had really great fear that we would fail because, you know, how people speak about young people, always demotivated, not implicated. There's nothing to do when you listen to grown-ups. With young people, I think they've had a surprise this year. And this is pretty fun to give it to them. So, at fall, we have had this massive information campaign. We printed thousands and thousands of newspapers. We were all across Quebec when students got in schools, which is actually, well, it's actually spring here when it's fall there. So, well, yeah. And we were everywhere. We had hundreds of people distributing flyers, leaflets, and everything. All the campuses, at some point, there were so many people on the campuses that when you were actually handing over leaflets, people were telling you, I already had 3 today, so please just leave me alone. So we've been able to do a really incredible job. Also with this, we have been able to approach people with a new aesthetic. We have had these new signs. There was a graphic designer that joined our organization. She was part of the information committee, kind of the propaganda committee of ASSE, that then became propaganda committee of class. So you can put the other, these are just like, I know you don't understand a word of what's written there, but it's just to get kind of an idea. It looks pretty cute and funny, so it was kind of a good approach, a good way to get close to people, which is actually a bit evil, but still. So, well, this is like, student debt, is it a solution? And, well, the answer is not. And all the texts were made by the research group, the really left-wing research group that was really, really helping us with all the arguments we would have with the government. So if you go about, like, this one is actually introduced on the English version of our website if you want to get one. So then, the long road to mobilization. It was really, really hard to believe that we have been able to put hundreds of people all across Quebec. We have been dealing with the lives of all of these people, like, what you doing next weekend? No, you don't go see your parents. You go in Quebec. No, you don't go see your parents. You go up nowhere in the back country. It was just amazing. We have been able to have a really great network of people, like I think you have here. So don't think it's impossible for things like this to happen here. It's really possible. Yeah. I wish for you it's going to happen because it's pretty cool. So, on the road to mobilization, the other national organizations went in public during the summer, claiming they were going to do a protest, a big demonstration on November 10th with us, without even consulting us. So we were pretty scared at first, but then we just tried to work it out with them, and we've been able to do the first project with these organizations that since about 6 years, since, well, the treason that we felt in the 2005 strike. Lots of people had great fear of these organizations' tactics, but finally it was pretty good. So, on the road to the mobilization, we have been able to put forward 3 main demands to the government. First of all, there was the demand of retiring the cuts of $85 million in colleges. I think it's pretty much the same thing as the government is trying to do at the present time with TAFEs. CEGEPs in Quebec are really low funded. I mean, they have great deficits. They don't really arrive to close their budgets. So they decided to cut their budgets dramatically in order to be able to privatize the collegial system in Quebec. Finally, they decided by themselves not to put this back in this year's budget. We don't know why. Maybe they realized their idea was pretty stupid, but, well, they didn't even go public with saying they took off this dramatic measure. The other demand was against the tuition hike in the perspective of free education. And this perspective was really, really important. And as the only national student regroupment demanding this, which is pretty surprising actually, because the other national regroupments don't agree with the principle of free education. Yeah. And the third demand was for a free, public, quality education system in the perspective of being clearly against commercialization of education. So that's pretty much the most anti-capitalist perspective that we have in our demands, even though class has never reclaimed itself from being anti-capitalist or revolutionary. I think it's pretty much in the practice that revolutionary perspectives like come from what we are actually. Yeah. So then there will be two. Cool. Then during fall, we had this great question. Was ASSE the good organization to lead this strike? And the answer we found was yes. We did pretty much something that ASSE used to do in 2005 because ASSE doesn't have the monopoly of all the students in Quebec. So we decided to, once again, open our structures in order to integrate students' unions that really wanted to get involved into the struggle, but didn't want to join ASSE officially on a long period of time. So we got our structures open for these unions simply to join for the strike. And it was clear at the time that these student unions would get eventually influenced by the way we were conducting the strike. And their own members would also be introduced to new ways of thinking politics, new ways of acting in public. So lots of members of class already have actually joined ASSE because they found it really good. So we're quite happy things are going on this way. And besides that, the other student organizations lost about 10,000 members each and are on the way to lose way more. So the context is really weird because this is really radicalization of youth. This is really political radicalization by the practice and not in the perspective or the ideology you put forward. But people have realized that without radicalization, you're not going to get anything from such a radically wrong government. Yeah. So then, on November 10th, we were really surprised by the protest that took place in Montreal. There were about between 30 and 50,000 people that actually joined the march. And we had not seen this for about, like, 7 years in Montreal. It was really, really amazing. We didn't even expect that. And as a matter of fact, we didn't even expect this. Well, we didn't even think we were going to be able to repeat this again. But we've been surprised during the winter. And on that single day, more than 200,000 people were on strike for that specific day. So this is the result of a big... Yeah. And you can go to the other one. Yeah. These are these funny security things of ASSE. I don't like them, but, well. So on that day, that's it. Lots of people were on strike, but lots of people were on strike only for that day. And lots of them, we have not been able to put them on a general strike during the winter for more than about a week or something. So the context is kind of weird, but on that day, FEC, FERC, and TASEC, the other three national regroupments, did also really great work of mobilization for that day. If it wouldn't have been of them, I mean, probably that day wouldn't have been that much of a success. So after that, just for fun, you can see the other picture. It's like, what the fuck, the hike? It's really nice. It's St. Lawrence, CEGEP. They're all hippie, weirdo artists, vegan-like. It's actually my favorite college. I love this place. I mean, you can do mobilization to people sitting around somewhere in a dirty couch. It's really fun. Demonstration on November 10th, and you can go on the other one. The education minister came out public saying, even with seeing such a mobilization and such an answer from the student movement in the streets, I don't care. I don't want to see them. They don't deserve me to go seeing them, even with this. And she said exactly this. And we were like, okay, so what's gonna go on up next? And we were really, well, pretty much disappointed of such an answer. I mean, we just didn't expect this type of answer after such a mobilization. But then it just clearly exposed to all the province of Quebec that this government is wrong. It knows they know they're wrong, and well, they were not about to change their mind, and that we were really needing to go forward to a general strike to make them actually bend themselves, so we could like pretty much kick their ass. Yeah. Yeah. So then, CLASSE was founded on the National Congress of CLASSE on December 3rd and 4th, 2011. It first started as pretty much a marginal still organization. At the time, there were only 8 new members and only 8 new local student unions joining the structure, and only 10,000 members. So we were about 70,000 members. Now at the present time, we're being about 105,000 people all across Quebec. So it's about as twice big as what ASSE is in ordinary time. So this is just incredible what has been going on. And I think, well, we have exposed to the people that the way we're doing things is the right way to do things if you want to get heard by the government. Because otherwise, they're just going to, well, not listen at you and tell you weird things on the television. Yeah. So then, in winter time, when winter came, we had to prepare all the general assemblies of the students' unions. Most students' unions have the tradition of having repetitive general assemblies, but most of the time, you're not used, when you're a 3,000 member students' union, to have 3,000 people general assemblies. This is a thing that really happened. We had really, really popular general assemblies all across Quebec. And this really led the government to be out of some kind of arguments, because usually what they were saying is that it's a minority of students that is actually acting. But now, with what was going on, I mean, it was a majority of people that was actually acting. And inside that same majority, there was a majority of people that were voting for the strike and against the tuition hike. So they were pretty fucked in their arguments, which is pretty fun, actually. Once again, yeah. So in winter, we had to prepare all of these general assemblies, find people to be the animators of these general assemblies. We had to make preparation of all of this. And this was really a hard time for the national team. But after a while, all the local students' unions have been able to be completely independent and run the things by themselves, which leads them to be way more capable today of leading such a strike, because we couldn't have done this without them being completely independent. We couldn't have been able to run the show for so long. I mean, we were completely and brutally tired after the first month of the strike. I mean, it's incredible how our local students' unions even took the lead forward and pushed us to our limits, and even went farther than we went as an organization. It was really cool. Cool. So, at the beginning of the semester in winter, because universities in Quebec start about the beginning of January, and the colleges start at the end of January. So 2 weeks after the beginning of the CCHEPs, on the day before Valentine's Day, in fact, just to give some love to the government. They must have felt love, I think. Well, it was the beginning of the general strike. It was just awesome. On Valentine's Day, there were all of these people walking around with big hearts downtown Montreal at the Prime Minister's office. It was really, really, really nice. But then, after that, at the beginning of the strike, there was about 40,000 people that were actually being on strike. And the first protest we organized for the beginning of the general strike had also 40,000 people in the streets. So there were as many people on strike as in the streets. So we were like, oh my God, we were expecting about 3,000 to 5,000 people to be to the gathering and then to the demonstration, but we were really, really surprised. And if you click, I think that will be a picture of that. Ah, nope. That's explaining the national team. Well, wow. I went through about 7 of these things. Well, ain't that bad. That's kind of the other thing was kind of the structure of the organization, which is pretty complicated, and I don't think I really have to get into the details of what are the committees and how the organization is really structured. This is pretty, well, heavy to listen to. And all of this really has been possible because of the size of the organization we have been able to put forward. I mean, in a normal year, ASSE has only about 8 to 12 elected people. This year, we have been able to have more than 50 elected people in the committees and on the executive committee too. So these people were people that were always at the office, always doing work, always coordinating their own committees. So CLASSE just became slowly really a war organization, structured and really disciplined to the point that we've been able to take the lead of the whole strike. And, well, to the great surprise of also the other national organizations. So, right before the beginning of the strike, because I'll just go back a little bit, there was the first direct action organized. It was on January 27th. That was the first time we really experienced police brutality. In fact, 2 comrades got severely hit and needed to go to the hospital at this time. There's even a YouTube video of cops taking a girl by the hair and just throwing her onto another cop, just beating her really severely. It was really dramatic that day. People got really traumatized by this experience. So when the strike first started, there was really fewer direct actions taking place in Montreal where the strike really began. So right after the beginning of the strike, there was the first demonstration that actually took place on February 23rd, and which I was talking to you about 5 minutes ago. Yeah. So this is a demonstration that united about 40,000 people in the street. So then, on March 1st, there was also a march organized in Quebec City. That march, well, there were about 10 to 15,000 people in the streets of Quebec City. But as I told before, Quebec City is so cold in winter, and it's so far, so you have to actually put all of these people into cold buses to go to that cold place and then go back into buses. So it's pretty complicated to convince people to actually go there to make a demonstration. I think that must be why they made the parliament there. So then right after, people were worried about how the strike was getting structured because there was no really pressure by direct action in the streets. So on March 7th, there was the first the blockade? Yeah, the first blockade action at the Loto Québec, which is the lottery provincial board in Quebec. Cool. Wow, 2 minutes. Fuck. Well, so at this time, it was organized by one of our local students' unions, and it was a great success. I mean, more than 3,000 people actually went to the blockade, and it was just completely incredible. The students, like you can see on one of the next pictures, I think it's the third one right after, because I have to go fast. Yeah. The students that were there actually took construction fences and put them in the streets and ran into riot cops with them. It was crazy. But then things started to get really brutal. I mean, one of our comrades lost an eye on this day. And because the cops started to use these flash bombs, flash grenades, and, well, flash grenades and really noise grenades that makes such noise but just explode. And they're made out of metal. So if you receive them in the eye or in the face, and I received one on the belly actually, it really hurts, and it surprises because it makes so much noise that you actually fall down, and it just opens a bit and it throws that irritating thing. It's just awful. But the guy just will never recover completely from what happened on that day. Well, there's actually another guy. It was pretty trendy for the cops to throw things in the eyes of the people because there was actually another comrade who lost an eye a little bit later during the strike. So then, every morning there was at least one gathering in Montreal and also in other places in Quebec. There were systematic blockades everywhere in the businesses, downtown Montreal, everywhere on the national, well, the state social sieges, in the state ministries. Every morning, hundreds of people waking up so early that after about 3 weeks, they looked pretty much dead, like zombies when they were waking up in the morning. It was really intense. So much that the business board of Montreal called a meeting with the government just to tell them, you must do something. Something that they officially never did. Yeah. So at this time, we really started the real confrontation with the cops and with the state. So we had the choice. Or you smash the state, or you get smashed by the state. And what happened is a little bit both of these things. So, well, by trying to smash the state, you get smashed back. So, well, it depends on the balance of power, I think. And it was a really hard time. Really, really tough time for all the militants, like I said. So, at some point, we were all waiting for March 22nd protest, the big protest that was called several months before, and which actually had about 300,000 people participating at. So we were all facing this date as an objective, and we didn't think of what was going to happen after this date, because we all thought, this is going to be, or we win at this date, or we lose. And what happened is that we didn't actually win on that date, but the strike is still going on today. So when you start these kind of things, you don't know how the hell it's gonna happen and how the hell it's gonna end. And yeah. So, well, I think I'll just have to skip all of the other actions that actually happened besides, well, yeah. I'll just simply go to the March 18 demonstration 4 days before the March 22nd demonstrations. That demonstration was really funny because all of these really direct actions we have organized and that local students' unions have been able to organize, we decided at the end of March to organize a family protest in order to get ourselves forgiven for everything that actually had happened during the last month, which was a great success. I mean, 50,000 people went up in the street and it was so warm for March. I mean, in the month of March, it was 30 degrees Celsius. It usually is about minus 15. So that must be climate change also. Well, which is not a good thing, but when you want to make demonstrations with families and babies, it's a good thing. Well. So then, on March 22nd, thousands and thousands of people gathered in the street with all these red squares at the point that when you look up in the street, everything is red. Everybody was dressing red. It was amazing. I mean, some people have actually been waiting for about 3 hours for the demonstration to start. Just only for the people to leave the space, the part where we were at the beginning of the protest. And it was quite a deal dealing with the other national organizations at that point, because at first, we weren't really invited to this protest. FEC and FERC called the protest without us. They thought they were going to get great political legitimacy by doing this really great move after all these weeks of strike by class and by class members. They didn't have really much members on strike at that moment, but we did. They even went public saying that we were unresponsible for going on strike too early when they were responsible for waiting to go on strike until March 22nd, only for 3 days. So it was pretty hard, but then at that moment, things started to get really intense because we simply invited ourselves to their protest. We even, at a Congress, we decided to give a gathering point to the protest in an hour. So they decided the date, we decided the place it was going to start. But then they gave the itinerary to the cops, so we were screwed. But then, well, things were doing pretty good. During the protest, the protest split in about 16 protests all across Montreal. It was pretty fun. It was a cool day. But then, as I said to some comrades yesterday, on March 23rd, the headlines of the most read newspaper in Montreal was saying, the movement is losing legitimacy in front of the population. I mean, this protest was the biggest in Canadian history. And this was the headline of the main corporate media in Montreal. And since that time, I think the elites must have been kind of feared of what we were actually able to do. And the media were systematically attacking us all the time on anything they could, treating us violent and intimidating, like I said in one of the workshops earlier today. And since then, we're the violent people. The cops beating guys, it doesn't matter. They're violent. They're making picket lines. They're wearing these violent symbols. The Prime Minister even once said that. So I guess I will have to finish now or sometime soon. Can I have like maybe a minute more just to explain? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Well, then there was this weird thing that also happened, is that these weird person. We have been using the red square for about 10 years now, which means you're squarely in the red, which in French means you're into deep shit. Well, yeah, that's the clear introduction of it. And this movement of individualist people claiming that they have the right to education, so they want to go through the picket lines, were organized with a green square on themselves, calling the cops, systematically like asking for courthouses to get injunctions to go back to school, to get private monitoring to go back to school, because teachers couldn't really like teach when there are 2 people in a class. I mean, you can't really teach. So they had to do private monitoring to these people. They were really, really, really annoying. And the media backed them up so much, they gave them some importance. They were calling their protests, but this was one of their protests. This was actually the protest they held on March 22nd. And truly, no kidding. And the day after on March 23rd, they had more importance in the newspapers than we had. Well, in most newspapers. So, well, it's really crazy. And after that, all sorts of colors of square kept on popping, white ones, blue ones, yellow ones. I still don't quite understand the meaning of all these squares, but, well, anyways. So then after that, it was quite a really intense thing to fight against injunctions. Not only did we have to make picket lines to get the local administrations to recognize our right to strike, we had to fight against the cops. And this was really, really giving us a hard time. Some people tried to do permanent occupations in some campuses, which was completely impossible. I mean, when the riot cops just go inside the campuses, which they didn't used to do in Quebec in the past. I mean, lots of places in the world, cops are not welcome inside the walls of university, of colleges. But in Quebec, since about 3 years, they've been systematically entering. They've been like arresting people inside the campuses, beating people inside the campuses. It was just awful. At some point, near Ottawa, the Canadian capital, in a city called Gatineau, the cops went in and thrown these CS gas grenades inside the university. So the people couldn't even get outside the campus, and everybody were trying to find their way outside, and once they were getting outside, they were hit by rows of cops trying to get out. Well, it was horrible. That scene, I'll just quite never forget this particular moment. It was really amazing. But then we were also targeted as being the only ones that were violent, which was the funny thing for us. But then the negotiations came with the government. They first invited us for negotiations, even though it wasn't really negotiations. They just wanted to expose us to the fact that, well, they agreed with themselves. So we didn't get anything from this first round of negotiations. We simply left. After that, they tried to invite the other national organizations because they found out it would be easier to deal only with them. Because in the past, when they used to deal only with these national organizations, they used to close a deal really fast. But this time, because of their members making pressure on them, they couldn't do it. So they refused to go on the negotiation table without us, which is a really incredible thing for this type of organization. I mean, we would have never thought they would have done this. we would have never hoped for such solidarity from these organizations. And we have to recognize this. Even though I don't agree with these organizations, we have to recognize that they have done great things to help the whole movement. Yeah. So after that, the government trying to kick us out, then bring us back in, then they simply bring back assay. Well, they said, we don't want to meet class, we want to meet only assay. Like, okay, well, assay, surprise, is being twice as more radical as class, so I guess you don't want us to be there either. But then they kicked us out because they didn't want to make an agreement with us. So this is the short story of the negotiations, a big joke organized by the government in Quebec. Yeah. But then with the failure of the negotiations, there was the start of, and yes, this is the pretty sympathetic Quebec Premier, Jean Charest, John James from his little name. Yeah, like a cowboy. Yeah. He acts like a cowboy, actually. And then with the failure of the negotiations came the night demonstrations. And the next one, you can see a picture of one of the big night demonstrations. It was really the start of something great. But then there were lots of riots during night because, I mean, it's dark, it's nighttime, people are drunk, and, well, that's what happened. But there was a night protest, and this is one of the greatest ones. I mean, I've chosen the best picture of it, but sometimes, well, with the time they grew smaller, well, they went smaller and smaller and smaller, but they're still going on, even if it's summertime, and that, well, the 3/4 of the militants actually left Quebec to go to British Columbia to pick up cherries like hippies for the summer. But, well, that's kind of a student pattern in Quebec, yeah, well, yeah. If you ever come to Quebec, you'll probably have to go to British Columbia to pick cherries during summertime. Yeah. It's quite an experience, yeah. British Columbia, woo! But then, the government introduced a seriously dramatic fascist law called Bill 78. You might have heard or read about it. I think it was also mentioned into Roger Aines's paper in the last Green Left newspaper. This law is just draconian. It suspends the civil liberties of actually having the right to protest. When you're in the street and you're more than 50 people marching in the street, you have to give your itinerary to the cops. Otherwise, you're going to get busted. You're going to get fined for $5,000 if you're an ordinary guy. If you're a student organizer, you're going to get a fine for $35,000. And if you're a student organization, you'll be fined for $125,000, which is actually money students' unions clearly don't have in Quebec after all of this struggle. So they know how to attack us, they know how to get us, and it's with money. They're capitalists. I mean, it's ordinary for them just to, their first reflex is to, what don't they have? Money. We're going to attack them with this. It was really dramatic, but introducing this bill for the government made a clear clash with all popular classes, all the artists. Even the state lawyers made a protest dressed as state lawyers in the streets with a big banner saying, "Lawyers against this stupid law." And it was really amazing. We didn't expect this. And from then, there was the famous casserole movement with the pots and pans things. Everybody was getting on their balcony at 8 o'clock every night, hitting their pots and pans. And I mean, in my neighborhood, that's, well, it's not that much of a small neighborhood, but it's a really popular neighborhood. It's a little bit ghetto. And it's pretty funny because it was clearly spontaneously, yeah. Yeah. I'll keep the accent, spontaneously, yeah. It's easier that way. And well, really fast. People getting in the streets, gathering around on corners of the streets, and after about 30 minutes, there were about 10, 15,000 people marching in the street. It was really amazing. And all these old, young people that didn't know each other, having fun with pots and pans, making noise, and people yelling at them, "I'm trying to sleep!" It was really funny. Well, the popular response was really something we didn't expect. But we've had great support by the population. And then from the casserole happened the popular assemblies in the neighborhoods. People gathering around and having popular assemblies, like pretty much in an anarchist society, thinking of the way they're gonna organize the life in their neighborhoods, the way they're gonna organize against this law, the way they're gonna organize things, and the way they're gonna make protests and everything. I mean, This was clearly something class had nothing to do with, but we were really surprised it was actually taking place. But I mean, all the militants were really involved into these assemblies, as I am as well now that I'm not in class anymore. So, after this, I'm finishing. Yeah. So you can go to the next one. So for now and for the future, since it's summertime and school is off at the present time, things have been slowly going down in Quebec, and we can see this and we can feel it. Even in Quebec, there has been the Formula One Grand Prix in Montreal that took place, and we tried to organize in order not to have this taken place in Montreal. Some people even gave some itinerary to the cops. It's always easier with the accent too, and saying that they were gonna organize protests on the circuit, which was pretty funny actually. But then we have tried to organize mobilization against the Formula One Grand Prix, but we have not been able, because it was summertime, to have masses coming there. But besides that, every 22nd of every month, there is a gathering of people that is it still kept on growing bigger and bigger and bigger month after month. I mean, on June 22nd, it was incredible. We really thought it was going to be a failure, because we thought, you know, after a while, things are going to start to go down. People are going to have lower interest into these demonstrations. But there were about 150,000 people still in the street. So we couldn't believe our eyes. But then for the future, CLASSE just published a manifesto, which is a political statement of our organizational positions, especially in the context that there will probably be elections really soon, provincial elections, that will probably get us into some kind of, well, we're going to be facing a wall, because the electoral laws in Quebec are systematically going to impeach us to do some things, well, to lead political campaigns against the government, against political parties. We're still going to get fines. And with Bill 78 still in place, we don't have the right to make picket lines. Otherwise, we're going to get arrested. We're going to get the local student unions completely shut down by the government. We're going to have, and Bill 78 also extends the cops' rights, which is pretty weird. And we still don't know how they're going to apply this fascist law, because they didn't apply it yet. But when the school is going to go back and we're going to try to start the strike again, this is when we're going to face the clear consequences of that bill. And people are quite feared about what's going to happen, especially that there will be elections combined to this. So, in answer to this, CLASSE decided right before I left, and I was supposed to be participating in the project, but since I'm here, I'm not participating in the project anymore. There were all these popular assemblies all across Quebec, just really great, making great public conferences outside, no matter where people wanted to invite us and speak, we would go. So at the present time, there's about 44 conferences planned in 44 different cities in Quebec, which is really impressive. So things are going to go really cool, I think, this summer, because when you don't have the filter of the media and that you're able to talk directly to people, this has great influence on the way politics are led. And this way, we hope to have greater influence on the electoral debate that we clearly don't want to take part of, besides the other organizations. And so, I think as a conclusion, I could say organizing is possible. We never thought we would be able to do this. I mean, we have always been qualified of a petit bourgeois, privileged class of young people that don't want to get involved into politics. But as soon as you do, and I'm pretty sure you will, they will tell you to shut up and vote, because this is your only right to express yourself in politics. But this is not. Organize yourselves, talk in your communities, organize your student unions, build solidarity networks between your student unions, and try to inspire yourself from the existing structures and from the existing struggles all around the world. I mean, with what's happening on the internet today, we can have a clearer view of what's going on all across the world. And with these information, we are stronger than we could have ever been. So everything is possible. I've seen you. You have the energy. You have the network. I mean, it's not everywhere in the world that they actually have national networks and even international networks with Joe. So just believe in it, and I think it'll come, because the reasons to be really indignated, well, to be mad at the system, Indignant. Yeah. Nice. Another word in my dictionary. Yeah. The reasons are there, and I think by speaking to all of you during the weekend, I mean, we can share experience, and we can learn lots of things from each other, because we didn't invent anything. We got inspired by what happened all across the world and in the past. So believe in yourself, and it will happen pretty sure. Thank you.